Good evening, everyone. This is Tim Reed running for City Council to represent you, our families, and our children and the future of Galt on the City Council. I ask for you to vote for me based on my top priorities, which are public safety, parks and recreation, responsible spending, and finding a solution to the homeless problem. That's what the presentation is going to be on today, because when I was out walking the neighborhoods, the highest priority for everyone that I talked to was, what are you going to do about the homeless situation? So please stay tuned for the next slides. We're going to go over some things that I'm going to do on the City Council to address the homelessness. Thank you, and have a great day.
Today we'll be talking about homelessness. But to come up with a solution for an issue like this, you have to understand all sides. So today we'll be talking about some statistics, some causes, some solutions, both what we're doing already and some other things that we could be doing in the future. And then of course I'll provide references on where I got a lot of this information. The first section we'll be talking about is statistics. We'll cover some of the populations, some of the homeless, shelter bed availability, and our per capita rates throughout the state. Over the next few slides, we'll be presenting some numbers of homeless populations from 2019 compared to 2022. We'll start off in California, where our 2019 homeless population throughout the state was 150,278. And it's taken a 15.66% increase in the last 3 years to end in the year 2022 at 173,800. California also rates number 1 in the highest homeless population in the United States. You'll see that California represents 12% of all of our U.S. population, but unfortunately 48% of our nation's homeless population reside right here in California. So to break those population numbers down in Sacramento County, in 2019 we had a total population of homeless of 5,500, and now in 2022 it's now up to 9,300, which is a 67% increase, and of those 9,300, 59% have reported that they've been homeless for more than 3 years. It can be broken down into two. We have the unsheltered, which in 2019 was 3,900, and in 2022 it rose to 6,664, or the sheltered homeless, which in 2019 was 1,661, and that's only raised to 2,614. You'll see the graph over here to the side representing each one of those numbers. So breaking down the increases between those 2 years for the homeless population in Sacramento County, on the far right we have the total. Right? We showed a 67% increase from 2019 to 2022 in total homeless. And then you'll see that we have only had a 57% increase in our sheltered homeless population. This is because the shelter just can't keep up, and we cannot expand the shelters fast enough to take into consideration that 67% increase that we saw across the county. And of course, if you have a high total increase and a lower sheltered increase, then you're going to see a drastic increase in the unsheltered homeless. A 71% increase from 3,900 up to 6,664. What you'll find in this next news footage is that our homeless population here in Sacramento is increasing even faster than the homeless population in San Francisco.
Sacramento County's homeless crisis is getting worse. The number of people living on the streets surged in the past 3 years to almost 9,300. And while we have an increase in the capital city, San Francisco's homeless population actually went down. So why is that? Well, KCRA 3's Maricela de la Cruz has reaction from city leaders in both cities.
It's a sight that's become more common.
This sort of just reaffirms what I think people are already seeing and experiencing every day.
And it's now officially recorded. Roughly 9,300 individuals are experiencing homelessness on any given night in Sacramento County.
Some of the reasons for the increase in unsheltered homelessness in our community and in California is most likely attributed to the high cost of housing and the lack of affordable housing.
Breaking down those numbers, the unsheltered count increased by 71% since 2019. Kelsey Dyson is among the newly counted. He says he's been unhoused for 2 years and has had a difficult time getting out.
It's harder now because once you hit this rock bottom, it's so hard. They look at you like you're an alien. I mean, they don't want to touch you. They don't want to be around you.
But as homelessness increased in Sacramento, we asked officials why San Francisco is reporting a decrease. They attributed the numbers to how data is collected. Noting the increase in our county, officials say preventative work can help identify people before they fall into homelessness.
For now, we absolutely need shelter space. We need spaces that are safe to send people to so that they can work on identifying their barriers to housing and move to that next appropriate step.
Kristen is among the 19% of individuals identified to be living in their vehicles and says that while she's had a hard time, she's motivated to get out.
This is just temporary. This isn't going to be something that's permanent for me at all. And if I go to a camp, I'm settling for that. And if I build something that's homey, then I'm settling for that. And I don't want to get used to it. I want this to be miserable, so then I have drive to build up.
Other key findings are that 58% of unsheltered adults reported having at least one disability, and Black residents are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience homelessness. So while they represent about 11% of Sacramento County population, they also make up 31% of the homeless population. In Sacramento, Maricela de la Cruz, KCRA 3 News.
Sacramento has seen an increase in the homeless population, even though the city took major steps to increase shelter capacity. In fact, that capacity increased 57% and provided shelter to more than 10,000 people over the span of 3 years.
Now that we've covered the homeless population in the state, in the county, now we're going to bring it home to Galt. In 2019, according to the Galt Police Department, we had 10 homeless people here in Galt. The police chief now estimates that the 2022 population, based on the 67% increase in the rest of the county, would put our homeless population at about 25. Last week I went and sat down with a lot of the homeless downtown and talked about their situation, and they estimate that it could be as high as 50. But we're waiting to see the next point in time count that is done by the city and the police department. Now that we've talked about our populations, the next thing we're going to talk about is our emergency shelter bed availability. So in California, they estimate to have about 50,000 emergency shelter beds for the homeless. That puts one bed for every 3 homeless people in the state. Down at the county level, they estimate that we have about 1,235 homeless emergency shelter beds. That's one bed for every 7.5 people that are sleeping on the streets. And then here in the city of Galt, we have no shelter beds for the estimated 25 to 50 homeless people. So now, based on the population and the emergency bed shelters, some people are saying, holy cow, this is becoming more of a problem. Well, the per capita rates show that here in Galt, we don't have as big as an issue as other places. So in the United States, we have 1.67 homeless people per 1,000. Here in California, it's drastically different. We have 4.5 people sleeping on the streets for every 1,000. In Sacramento, it's a little bit better. It's 4 per 1,000, but here in the city of Galt, based on the Galt Police Department's numbers, we have 1 homeless person for every 1,000 residents here in Galt, which is the best homeless per capita rate in the area and in the county of Sacramento. So you may be sitting back telling yourself, okay, now I know all about the homeless populations and the shelter bed availability and the per capita rates. But really, what does cause someone to become homeless? It can be narrowed down to 4 things: drugs and alcohol, violence and abuse, mental illness, and no affordable housing. You'll see that when it comes to drugs and alcohol, 30 to 40% of all homeless suffer from this addiction. Most of the research shows that around 1/3 of the people have problems with drug and alcohol, and around 2/3 of these people have a lifetime history of drug or alcohol use disorders. You'll see that according to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, 38% of homeless people abuse alcohol. And from sitting down and talking to the homeless people here in Galt, the reason is because they just want to dull the pain of having to experience that situation. You'll see in this newscast there's increase in concern for the homeless in certain areas using drugs. And it's not just in the Land Park area in which they reference, it's all over the county, including Galt, Elk Grove, all the way up into Sacramento.
Cell phone video shows a scary sight on a Land Park sidewalk. A man sprawled out on the ground. CBS 13 viewer took the video and believes this man was high on drugs.
CBS 13's Steve Large is live in Land Park with the drug abuse concerns from people who live in that area. Steve.
Yeah, and the viewer who recorded this video was out for a walk this weekend and walked right up on this man on the sidewalk. We have chosen to blur the man's face out. As extreme a picture as it is, people who live here in Land Park say it's become all too common. Cell phone video shows a man with his shoes off and eyes closed, sprawled out and squirming on a Land Park sidewalk. The CBS 13 viewer who recorded the video says the man was on drugs. I showed the recording to people who live on the block.
It's unfortunately, that's become the normal in this neighborhood.
James Brasher bought his home in Land Park 16 years ago and no longer feels safe.
People are living in the bushes around here. They're living behind our houses. They're everywhere, and they're suffering. And we're watching them suffer in real time.
This weekend, this Land Park Starbucks even closed permanently, citing neighborhood safety concerns.
It's sad, but my kids, I don't feel safe letting my kids walk to school.
A lot of scary situations for kids to walk to school.
Amy Gardner lives in East Sacramento and helped clear this sidewalk for students to walk to school in her neighborhood, where drug use under this overpass is also rampant.
First of all, if you were a kid, you don't know how to respond. And I don't think kids should be exposed to that. These are all the dirty needles we picked up.
Public health records show Sacramento County had 144 opioid-related deaths in 2021, a 44% increase from 2 years earlier.
100% have empathy. These people, they're people. They're human beings.
This startling cell phone video from a viewer just out for a walk. Frightening, and now also familiar. And another example of the homeless crisis playing out here on Sacramento streets, and also another concern for parents who will be sending their children off to school. The Sacramento City Unified School District starts on Thursday.
All right, Steve Large reporting live for us tonight. Thanks so much, Steve.
So after the drug and alcohol use, the number 2 is violence and abuse. Up to 57% of all homeless women have reported some kind of domestic violence that was the immediate cause of their homelessness. 38% of all domestic violence victims become homeless at some point in their lives. 28% of mayors across the state have cited domestic violence as a leading cause of homelessness among families and children. This is why we need the services that I talk about in the solution section to help these people before they become homeless. This next news clip is taken from our own hometown. A woman that was experiencing homelessness due to the violence and abuse was out on the street and who almost lost a newborn baby because of her situation. Thankful we have residents here in Galt that stepped up and was able to save the baby's life.
A Galt woman is charged with attempted murder after abandoning her newborn baby. KCRA 3's Tom Duhane says it is a bizarre case in which a homeless woman gave birth and then left the infant outside in the cold.
This is the Galt home where the newborn was discovered Tuesday morning in the front yard. Justin Nelson, a resident here, made the discovery after hearing the distinctive sound of an infant crying.
The baby, when I got back, was right here, sideways like this. Not long ways, but sideways. And she had it wrapped up in a sweatshirt. It wasn't a pretty sight.
Police say the mother, DeWanda Mahoney, a 30-year-old transient, gave birth inside this nearby screened-in porch where she sleeps. Nelson says Mahoney was lying on the porch saying, "That's not my baby."
Anybody that can leave a baby like that and not care is just...
The infant girl, in critical condition with a body temperature of just 85 degrees, arrived at Kaiser Hospital South, where doctors saved her life. If you hadn't found that baby then, that baby would have died of hypothermia.
Yes, sir. I found it was laying in a sweatshirt, and I covered it up more with another sweatshirt, and I kept it warm because, again, I have 4 children, so it was heartbreaking.
DeWanda Mahoney is now facing a charge of attempted murder.
There's a fire department located less than 50 yards from the residence where the child was found. So there were no efforts made on behalf of this female, our suspect, and doing anything to provide for the well-being of that child.
Police say the infant girl's condition has been upgraded to fair. She is expected to survive. In Galt, Tom Duhane, KCRA 3 News.
Sacramento County Child Protective Services will now be responsible for the infant's welfare.
You'll see that over 25% of all homeless people suffer from some kind of severe mental illness. The top diagnoses for those are 24% major depressive disorders, 24% schizophrenia, 14% substance abuse disorders, 9% bipolar disorders, and another 6% unspecified anxiety disorders. This is why we need to work closely with Sacramento Mental Health to get these situations addressed. This news broadcast is just one example of how our mental health system and mental health illnesses in general affect the homeless, their families, and our communities as a whole. And something needs to be done about it.
Tanisha was beautiful, she was creative.
Each picture on this poster, a memorable moment loved ones shared with Tanisha Deal. Tanisha's family telling KCRA3 her life was cut short by a terrible tragedy.
The pain is just indescribable. We don't know how to describe it. We're barely handling it.
Tanisha was seriously hurt in a hit-and-run crash in August on this stretch of Garden Highway near Northgate Boulevard. She died on September 16th, doctors calling her injuries catastrophic.
There was no brain activity. Her legs, her hips, her back, her liver, her lungs were all damaged to the point of no repair.
Adding to the anguish is that the family believes this could have been avoided. Tanisha, a mother of 3, was homeless at the time of the crash and had been struggling with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia for more than a decade. Loved ones blaming the mental health system for letting Tanisha fall through the cracks.
That's partly how we got here. We knew one day that we would have to answer questions or answer the phone call that would change our life forever. And all we wanted was help.
While Tanisha's family says she did get help at some point, they claim there was little to no follow-up.
Mental health system, y'all dropping the ball. You dropping the ball, and you creating a lot of hurt and pain and death to our loved ones out there that's suffering from these mental illnesses. And I think that they should do more.
Officials saying they're doing everything they can, but there are limitations.
It is the clients or the person experiencing homelessness. Ultimately, it is their choice.
Monica Roca-Wyatt, who oversees Sacramento County's behavioral health initiatives for the unhoused, says they're encouraging people in need to seek out resources, especially with their new Homeless Encampment and Response Team, or HEART, which meets the unhoused where they are.
We have the ability to assess them for our services and link them to the appropriate level of services right there out in the field. And then the best part of this team is they don't stop there. They provide brief case management to make sure they go to that first intake appointment.
A provider takes over for the continuum of care, but the county follows along for the whole process. Sacramento County Behavioral Health Director Dr. Ryan Quist also says they're ramping up resources from what used to be 3 walk-in sites.
We are now in the middle of implementing our brand new system of care, which actually increases our number of sites to 10 outpatient clinics.
A few sites are already open, including this one near the American River and this one in the Natomas area. Many families, including Tanisha's, are also in favor of new legislation that establishes the care court system in California. The controversial program would make it easier for families and first responders to force mentally ill Californians into psychiatric treatment through court-ordered care.
She is a mother, she is a daughter, she is a cousin, she is a sister.
As they hold on to her memory, Tanisha's loved ones say they will not let her death mean nothing.
I'm going to advocate for the homeless and for the mentally ill, and if I got to do it to the day I die.
A newfound purpose grown out of grief. Reporting in Sacramento, Orko Manna, KCRA 3 News.
Sacramento County's behavioral health team tells KCRA 3 they're currently growing their new team, adding another 7 clinicians to the 8 already in the field. For more information about county resources, you can go to kcra.com.
The last cause I wanted to touch on was no affordable housing. It is not a shock to anyone that California is one of the most expensive and fastest growing housing markets out there. For the last 21 years, our home values have more than tripled in some metropolitan areas throughout the state. As of March 31st, 2021, the typical home value in California is $650,000, which is double New York and Florida and triple of Texas. If someone were to get a job that was paying them $18 an hour, which is roughly about minimum wage now, their monthly income is going to be around $2,880. But of course we have to pay Uncle Sam, so we're paying our taxes, which takes $864 out of our check. This leaves them with $2,016 a month. With an average rent cost of about $1,760, this leaves them with $256 a month, or $64 a week to live on for everything else. And people wonder why there's a home crisis in this state and how this really affects the homeless.
Sacramento has topped the list of the least affordable new home markets in the country. Not the list you'd want to be on. The median new construction home price in Sacramento region is $650,000. In order to afford the $39,000 down payment, Sacramentans need an income of about $128,000. But the median household income here is just over $76,000. The housing crisis has reached the rental market as well. Home values in the region jumped 21% in the last year. So the typical apartment rent in the Sacramento region is now $1,760 a month, higher than Seattle, Washington, D.C., and even New York.
So now that we've talked about the causes we've talked about the populations. Now we can move on to the solution. This is a whole community planning approach, though. It involves all of the organizations I'm going to talk about next. We start with our religious organizations. We have a lot of religious organizations that are in this community to help everyone from the homeless to the low income to anyone that needs their assistance. And I've got a couple of them up there that run food pantries. When I met with the homeless last week, they only had a few requests. They don't want to be homeless, but while they're out there experiencing homelessness, they'd want to be able to have an access to a shower. They want to be able to have access to toilets. They really want a place to be able to plug in their phones so that they can use them to call for help in an emergency. And then our city leadership. When I was out talking to the homeless people, I explained to them that, hey, we don't have a lot of services here in Galt, that all the services that they require are all in Sacramento. And they agreed that all they need is transportation to get to Sacramento, and they would be more than happy to take advantage of those services. But then our city leadership also needs to continue approving stricter municipal codes to increase our park safety, our cleanliness, so our families and our children can go to the park and not be worried about their safety. On the next two slides, you'll see the pamphlet that our wonderful Galt Police Department has put together for the Homeless Services Guide. We have assistance for veterans, assistance for senior citizens, information about libraries, other important contact information from emergency to non-emergency numbers, district attorney, domestic violence, other law enforcement agencies. And this has all been provided from your Galt Police Department to all the people experiencing homelessness. And this is page number 2 of that same guide, right? Housing for families and children, housing for women, housing for men, emergency housing, housing for youth, housing for mental health, housing for people with HIV and AIDS, domestic violence, and alcohol and drug services. And you'll see that on this list, all of them are located in Sacramento. All of them are located out of Galt. So we need to work together to find a way to get these people connected to these services that are not in Galt, that are in other areas, so that they can get the help that they need. Next up is steps that our own Galt Police Department have taken already or are in the middle of taking. We've contracted with the Sacramento County Division of Behavioral Health Services. They're going to provide one mental health specialist for 20 hours a week right now, assisting with the homeless and other mental health patients. That person will be riding along with one of our POP officers, which stands for Problem-Oriented Policing. They're also adding, we have one current part-time officer, and they're adding one full-time officer to this POP program. And that's already in the works with our own police department right now. Another thing we can do to work with our local law enforcement is we've got to have some kind of committee on homelessness. Once on the city council, I'm going to propose the formation of this committee on homelessness, consisting of at least one person from these following organizations. We need someone on the public safety committee. We need one of our council members. We need somebody from South County Services. We need somebody from the Galt Police Department. And we need a representative from the religious organizations in the area that already provide services. All of this together will give us a well-rounded understanding and multiple different views of how we can work on the homeless situation here in Galt. The last possible solution is an increase in permanent supportive housing at the county level, the ones that get all the money to address your homeless issues. And the Housing First initiative is going to be the way that we're going to get there. You'll see in this video that the city of Houston adopted this Housing First model, and they were able to reduce their homeless population by 63% using Housing First.
But now let's debrief, because the city of Houston is being recognized nationally for how we have handled homelessness. Fox 26's Gabby Hart joining us live to debrief us on the numbers. And Gabby, talk about the decline that we've seen. It's been significant over long years, but in recent years, I mean, what are the numbers?
That's right, Caitlin. Now, when you're driving around the city, it might not look like it when you see those homeless encampments. The city officials say that in 2011, the number of people experiencing homelessness was more than 8,000. And as of today, that number is just over 3,000.
You know, at one point in time, you know, Houston was on the list as being one of the cities with the worst homeless problems. But that has changed.
A recent article from the New York Times is commending the city of Houston for how officials have handled the homeless crisis. Houston is the 4th largest city in our nation, but stats are showing that compared to larger cities, we've got a better grip on homelessness.
In the last decade, we've reduced homelessness in the city by 63%.
That's nearly 25,000 people housed over the years. And Mayor Turner says it took a village with local businesses, faith-based groups, and nonprofit organizations like Coalition for the Homeless.
We definitely are seeing less individuals experiencing homelessness on the streets.
Anna Rausch is the vice president of operations with Coalition for the Homeless. She says Houston is standing out because of its Housing First motto, meaning people don't have to complete any programs before they get housing.
We want to make sure that we house people before they try to work on anything else.
Rausch also says the number of organizations participating in the Way Home project means ample community resources working together to help those experiencing homelessness.
It's over 100 partners working together to end homelessness.
And when it comes to veteran homelessness, our city says they've successfully solved that issue.
It doesn't mean that there's not any homeless veterans out there. It means that we can house those veterans quickly.
A lot of times, a lot of people have lost hope.
Misty Richardson experienced homelessness in her past. She's now the founder of Reach the Homeless, working hands-on to help people living on the streets. She says while she can see the progress, more can be done.
A lot of times, some people are still falling in between the cracks. And I think that if the support is strengthened, that it will go a long way.
So, Gabby, you mentioned just over 3,000 people still on any given night in our area are out there. Do they think that they can still get that number even lower?
Well, Caitlin, I can tell you that that is definitely one of the goals the mayor talked about today during a city council meeting. That number, 3,000 or more than 3,000, is still an alarming number of people on our streets. But again, the mayor, along with the Way Home organizations, are looking for a way to continue to combat that homelessness and keep that number decreasing and not increasing.
And the mayor of New York City is apparently coming down to visit. What's that about?
That's right. Mayor Turner announced today that after the New York Times aired that article, that the mayor of New York City reached out to him stating that he wanted to come along with his team and really learn and get a firsthand look at what the city of Houston is doing that's been so successful at targeting and tackling homelessness. For now, I'm reporting live. Gabby Hart, back to you, Caitlin.
Something for us all to be proud of, to be leading the way. Gabby, thank you.
Until the Housing First model can be initiated in our county, we need to have something as a stopgap to address the homeless issue. That's going to be an increase in your emergency sheltering capabilities. Sacramento County needs to increase their emergency sheltering capabilities by up to 7 times. Can that be reduced after the Housing First model goes into effect? Absolutely, as a transition as we get these people out of their homeless situations and into the Housing First program. The state legislature has also doubled down. Between the years of 2018 and 2020, California spent $13 billion on homelessness across 9 state agencies through 41 different programs. And just in 2021, California passed a bill to fund $12 billion, almost equal to what they did the 2 years prior, to try to help address this crisis. This slide shows you a representation of the issues that California has dedicated those $12 billion to, that they allocated to homelessness. 2.75 billion in buying hotels and motels and turning them into homeless. 2.2 for existing building renovations. 2 million for flexible grants for local governments. 1.75 billion to expedite construction. 179 million to assist families experiencing homelessness to secure their permanent housing. 805 million competitive grants for counties and tribes to rehabilitate adult and senior living facilities. 150 million to move clients from shelters into permanent housing. So first I want to say thank you for listening to this presentation about how I am going to work to help this homeless situation that we have here in Galt. Homelessness is only going to get worse unless we together work as a whole community, planning and preparedness towards addressing the homeless crisis and getting these people transitioned into permanent in Sacramento County housing and out of Galt. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to email me at timreed@timreedforcitycouncil.com. You can also visit my website, www.timreedforcitycouncil.com. And I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about this priority and any of my other priorities. Please vote me for City Council because together we can work to make Galt better for everybody. Thank you and have a great day. Last but not least, you need references. Unfortunately, because of the way the video is set up, you won't be able to click on these links, but if you Google them, you will be able to find them. I highly recommend the bottom link for the videos. Los Angeles, the City of Homeless. It was a documentary done by a news channel down there. It was so informative, and you'll get a lot of good information. Watch it. Thank you again, and have a great day.